Smith Wesson M&P 10mm. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. You might see that I am wearing a shoulder holster rig. That is because today we are going over the Smith Wesson M&P 2.0 10mm. But not just any M&P 10mm. This one was actually involved in an encounter with a grizzly bear. This is my brother's M&P, and came pretty close to saving his life. He's still alive today. So if you want to hear all about that, make sure you're subscribed, and let's start this video. If you guys have been watching the channel for any length of time, you know how much I love the Smith & Wesson M&P pistols. This is the same thing, but with new features, and it's in best millimeter. So a little bit of backstory first. You see, again, like I said, I'm wearing it in this shoulder holster rig. This is because my brother bought this M&P 2.0 10mm as bear protection, as he is an avid elk hunter. And me being the gun guy, he asked me about a year ago, I'd say, what sidearm he should get to protect himself in bear country when he's out hunting elk. Well, you guys know how much I love the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. I've had a 2.0 9mm for a long time, and I absolutely love this pistol. I've put tons of rounds through it. It's been 100% reliable. It shoots really well, and I've trusted it with my life. And at the time that he'd asked me about it, Smith & Wesson had just came out with the 10mm M&P 2.0, and it has all of the upgraded features that I had to pay a lot extra for to upgrade my gun to have those same features. And so the M&P 2.0 10mm is a really, really good value. And like I said, it's a gun that I knew that I trusted, and 10mm is widely known as the caliber to protect yourself against bears when it comes to a handgun. And so that is what I recommended to him, and that's what he got. So the first thing that we're gonna do is go over the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 10mm, what it is, the features that it has, because it has a lot of upgraded features from the original M&P 2.0. You guys all know how much I love my M&P 2.0, but I had the older version of it, which I had to do a lot of these upgrades myself, which cost me a lot of extra money. I had to have the slide milled for a red dot so that I could mount my Holosun EPS on it. It had the original hinge trigger, which was a terrible trigger, so I had to install the Apex trigger, which is absolutely fantastic. I also mounted a light on it, Cerakoted the slide, and whatnot. But this pistol has been 100% reliable, and I trust it with my life. So when my brother asked me what sidearm he should get for being in bear country when he's out hunting by himself, I told him to get the brand new at the time M&P 2.0 10mm. And I think that this gun is a great value because it comes with a lot of the features that mine didn't come with, but right out of the box. We're gonna go up close in a second, but just to show you guys, the new flat face, pretty much flat face trigger that it has is way, way better than that hinge trigger. The take-up isn't as smooth as the Apex, and that just has to do with the trigger safety plunger there, the striker safety plunger. I think if you replace that, it would be just as smooth. But the brake on it is fantastic, and the reset is pretty dang good as well. It also comes with suppressor height sights, already milled for an optic with the Smith & Wesson core system, and it has real front slide serrations, not these little tiny things that don't really do much. Now, I can press check with this, but I sure would have liked to have some real slide serrations like this on mine. Let's go up close and take a look at this. We're gonna do some trigger pulls with the pull gauge, and then I'm gonna tell you about my brother's encounter with the grizzly bear. So here we have the M&P 2.0 9mm. This is my personal gun. And my brother's M&P 2.0 10mm. And right off the bat, you could see some differences. Now, this is not the original trigger in mine. I did install the Apex trigger, and that's because the original trigger was terrible. They fixed that with the new trigger here, and it is much, much better. As you can see, also the front slide serrations, very easy to get a hold of for press checks, manipulating the slide if you've got a red dot back here, and whatnot. But let's do a couple trigger pulls here and just see what this new Smith & Wesson trigger pulls at. 4.2 pounds. Pretty consistent. I did get 4 pounds before I started filming this, but it always, for some reason, measures a little higher when I'm doing it behind the camera. I think it's just body mechanics and I've got things in the way. But as you can see here, the 10mm M&P 2.0, the new version, and the 9mm is the same way. It does come optics ready. This is the Smith & Wesson Core series or Core system. There is a plate system and you can mount different optics on it very easily, which is nice because I actually had to send my slide off to get milled for an optic. The post office lost my slide. I had to buy a new one, send a new slide off to get milled, and it's re-cerakoted and everything else. And it was a big hassle and a big extra cost. You don't have to deal with that with the newer versions of the M&P here, which is really, really nice. Now, a couple of other features that it has, again, I keep mentioning the forward slide serrations, but that is something that I wish mine had come with instead of these little tiny, barely usable slide serrations. Now, it does still have all of the same other features that the M&P 2.0 had that were so good. It has the perfect grip angle, in my opinion, and it's 18 degrees, the same grip angle as a 1911, which you guys know I love the 1911. Suppressor height sights already, so that if you do mount a red dot, you can co-witness your irons through it just fine. And one thing that I really like about this, so the M&P, one of the issues with it, in my opinion, is that the slide stop, slide release is pretty hard to engage. I find myself sometimes at the range doing, reloads and sometimes missing my slide release because you actually have to push it pretty hard. Well, the new one, that is not an issue. It's much, much easier to engage, and that to me is really nice. You get 15 rounds of 10mm, and I shot it today. I didn't shoot a whole lot of ammo today, but the ammo that I did shoot was full powered Underwood 10mm. If you guys know anything about 10mm, some of it is basically just a glorified 40 Smith & Wesson, but Underwood does make a full powered 10mm, and you can feel it. There is quite a bit more recoil in the 10mm than the 9mm, but that's to be expected with higher powered ammo. And when you're protecting yourself against bears instead of possibly humans, it is nice to have that extra power, that extra millimeter. So when my brother's out hunting, carrying this as his sidearm, he's a bow hunter. He hunts elk with a bow and arrow. Not using a firearm for his hunting, but he felt like he wanted to be safe and prepared out in the woods, especially when he's hunting by himself. And I think that's really smart. And me being a gun guy, he asked me what my opinion was on the right sidearm for him to have. And I was thinking something reliable, striker fired, something easy to shoot well. And having just come out at the time, the 10mm version of the M&P, it was a no-brainer to me. And I do believe that this was the right choice for him. He carries this in a chest rig because, when he's got his full kit on for hunting, it's much easier for him to access than trying to come around onto his hip or something like that. And so that is the whole point of the chest rig here. This is a very high quality holster. Obviously, it's cut for if you want to run a red dot, if you want to have a threaded barrel, this will accommodate it. It's a very, very good holster. Oh my God. And it works well for him. Let me tell you guys what happened. So I told him to buy this gun. He did some research. It had just come out at the time. He lives in Seattle. So he is in the communist state of Washington, which is difficult to get firearms in general there, especially compared to where I live here in Idaho. And it's become even more difficult recently as of January 1st, 2024. In fact, I believe he only has one magazine for this gun because right after he bought this, they passed a law against standard capacity magazines, high capacity magazines, and that's anything over 10 rounds. Well, this holds 15 rounds of 10mm, and so nowhere in Washington carries 15-round magazines anymore. And so he kind of got stuck with one 15-round magazine for his pistol, even though he did buy this in Seattle, Washington. He went to a number of different gun stores. Some of them were trying to charge outrageous prices for it, and then he found one that had it at a reasonable price, what I would pay for a Smith Wesson M&P 2.0, and so he purchased it. Well, I asked him time and time again for the next few months, have you gone out and shot your 10mm yet? Well, my brother has 3 very young babies. At the time, he had 2 of them are twins, his first 2, and they were tiny babies, and he was very busy between that and work and everything else. He just kept telling me he didn't have time to go out and shoot his pistol yet. Well, finally one day he calls me because, being the responsible hunter that he is, he was headed out to Montana on a 10-day hunting expedition, solo hunting trip by himself in the backwoods of Montana, and he wanted his family members to know where he was in case anything happened. Do that if you go out in the woods by yourself. You have to be as safe as you can when you're putting yourself in that kind of risk, that kind of danger. And so that's what he was doing. He was very excited to go out on this hunting trip. And then I heard from him, might have been the next morning or the morning after. I think he was out there for a couple days, couple nights, and he calls me one morning. I'm at work, and I could tell he was very excited. Something very exciting had happened the night before, and he tells me this whole story. So he had set up camp way out in the woods somewhere by himself. He'd found some elk. He'd been on the elk. He'd seen lots of evidence of a grizzly bear nearby. Well, he was asleep in his tent, middle of the night, like 2 a.m, and he starts hearing what he describes to me as the scariest sound he's ever heard, of this grizzly bear growling about 100 yards away, making all kinds of ruckus, being very aggressive, probably because it smells him and his camp and what he's got going on there. And he's in the bear's territory. And so the bear is being a grizzly bear. Well, it wakes him up, obviously, and he is listening very intently. And the bear comes closer and closer. And all of a sudden, the bear is right outside his tent, growling, snorting, digging, making what my brother describes as the scariest sounds that he has ever heard or experienced in his life. And he's there by himself, lying in his sleeping bag, holding this pistol on his chest, loaded, ready to go, trying not to make a sound so that hopefully the bear will just go away, but also trying to be ready in case he needs to handle business. But can you imagine how scary that would be? Being in your tent, grizzly bear, all right around you. You can't see it because you're inside the tent, which was the predicament that he was in, and just hoping that you're going to be able to make the shot if you have to. Well, he laid there for hours as this went on, basically crapping his pants. And eventually he said he was trying to be as silent as possible, just holding his pistol, sweating bullets. And eventually the bear went away. He actually fell asleep, got up the next morning, packed up camp, and got the hell out of there. And then he called me as soon as he got into town and had cell phone reception and told me about all this. And my first question to him was, have you shot your gun yet? Do you know that it works even? And he said, yes, I have now. He had not even shot the thing before that encounter with the bear that night. But after he packed up his camp the next morning, on his way back out into town, he pulled over on the side of the road, ran a magazine through it. Of course, it's an M&P 2.0. It ran perfectly reliably. But while he was there, wondering if he was going to have to use it, He had no idea if his gun was even going to work because he had never even shot the thing before. So when he told me this whole story, I could tell that it had been a very, very scary situation for him. And my brother's like me. We've both been through a lot of situations in our lives. Neither of us are scared easily. But this was a scary situation for him. And it made a good point in my opinion. Whenever you get a gun, if you're going to use it for any kind of self-protection, whether protection against other humans or protection against bears or anything else, you need to go to the range. You need to shoot that thing. You need to make sure that you're confident with it, comfortable with it, and that you know that it's reliable and that you can put rounds on target if you need to do that. So that was a big lesson for my brother to learn. And he has now shot it quite a bit, as far as I know. I know he's shot it at least the one time. So he knows that the gun works, that he can trust it, and that he can shoot it well, which is a good thing. But I'm sure it would have been good for him to know that when there's a grizzly bear outside of his tent in the middle of the night, in the middle of the forest. I would feel a lot better knowing that I've shot my gun before and that I know that it works, and not that my first shot ever on it might have to be one to save my life against a giant grizzly bear. So use that as an example to do for yourself. If you've just bought a new pistol, make sure you go run that thing. Get good with it. That's very important. But anyway, talking about this Smith Wesson M&P 10mm, it shoots like an M&P. It's got that perfect grip angle. It's got very, very aggressive texture, which with a 10mm is very important because especially if you're shooting full powered ammo, this thing does kick quite a bit more than a 9mm does. It has a lot more recoil, and you have to be able to hold on to that thing. And the M&P really, I think it has the best grip texture in the industry. It is very easy to keep a good grip on this thing. It's an easy gun to control. It's very accurate. It's very reliable. And if you need a sidearm for going out in bear country, I highly recommend the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 10mm. And so does my brother, the one who actually uses this when he goes out hunting. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Please share this video with any hunters you know or anybody that's just looking for a 10mm pistol. Let me know down in the comments if you have tried the M&P 2.0 10mm or the Glock 20 or one of the 1911s chambered in 10mm. Let me know which one your favorite is and tell me what you think about my brother's bear encounter, because I thought it was a pretty good story to bring you guys. From Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.